Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is the things to say or not to say to black people. Now, just want to warn you, this is a comical podcast. This is a little comedy, but there's a lot of truth in what I'm about to say. And how I came to this podcast was uh I was listening to my man King Germ and Queen Germ on the Frocast podcast. Shout out to them. Frocast drops every Friday, and I was listening to him on a Friday. And King Germ was talking about a story, and I can't remember exactly what was happening in the story, but he gave a quote for someone who had said something to somebody black, or at least I assumed that the person who was speaking wasn't black, and they were talking to someone who was black, and I was like, that ain't something that you say to a black person. Now, honestly, I don't know really the true demographics of the people that listen to this podcast. I see that, when I do look at the numbers, as rare as that is, I do see that there are people like in China and people in, Yugoslavia that actually listen to this podcast. And shout out to y'all for listening, especially Australia. A lot of people in Australia listen to this podcast. And understand, I don't know anybody in these countries, right? So I can assume that there are quite a few people who listen to this podcast that aren't black. In case you were wondering, I'm black. So I think I can speak with a little bit of authority on this, but it's all in good fun. But there is some truth. And what I want you guys to do is, as you're listening, just make sure that you don't say these things. And I'll explain why. So I wrote some things down because the conversation that King Germ and Queen Germ were having, and that statement that Germ made, and I wish I knew which episode it was. It was a couple of weeks back, but it just got me to thinking. So I started writing some notes down as I was listening to their podcast. Um, Nonetheless, I got a couple of things here, so I'm gonna run them down to you. When you're speaking of someone's appearance, one thing not to say, you're really pretty for a black girl. Yeah, that's not gonna fly. And honestly, if we're being totally honest, I've heard black people say that too. Meaning, or let me fix it. You're really pretty for a dark skinned girl. Yeah, that one kind of grinds my teeth a little bit. And I wish I had time to talk about the light skin, dark skin, but we don't have time for that. Y'all ain't ready for that discussion anyway. So, but no, that's not something that you say. If someone is pretty, you tell them that they're pretty. Period. um, Number two, are your lips real? Yeah, I don't know like the percentages, but I'm willing to step out on a limb and say most black people don't have lip surgery. It's usually people who are white and people of other ethnic descents that increase their lip size, if you will. And it's not to say that there aren't black people who are having cosmetic surgery that are changing their lips or making their lips smaller, but for the most part, it's not us. So that's not a question that you want to ask anyone. And honestly, God only gave us two lips. So if they're on someone's face and you can see their lips, I'm pretty sure they're real. Now, they could be cosmetically, placed there, but still real nonetheless. Number three, you're like black. Yeah, flag on the play, timeout. If you're not black, you can't comment on someone else's pigmentation. Now, if someone is black, they might say, "Oh man, he's black, black." Okay, that's a little bit understood. Now, again, we get into the light versus dark type of thing, but that's us. That's how we get down. That's how we give it up. You know what I'm saying? So just leave that to us. But no, you can't say someone's black, black. I mean, like, if black isn't enough. I mean, but then again, I mean, honestly, like for me, for most of you who don't know me or know that I'm black, I'm dark skinned. So I love the hue that I'm in. I've always have. I think it's a very endearing quality, and my appearance is everything. So I'm someone who thinks very highly of how I look. Um, so you know, calling me black, black, it's not an insult. In fact, I might give you props for calling me that. But nah, that's strictly solely for black people. Um, let's see. Oh, number 4. Can I touch your hair? This is a no-no. You cannot touch a black man or a black woman's hair, period. You can ask, but what I found is that a lot of times people will ask in the midst of reaching towards their no, 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 no. Don't do that. Because depending on the situation and where you are, you might get your hand slapped or you might get your face slapped. Like I have a daughter and she's 10 at the time of this recording, and she doesn't like anybody touching her hair. I don't even touch her hair, but if I did, I'm her father. She's been told on several occasions, don't let anybody touch her hair. So if some little kid in her class thinks that she has nice hair and they want whatever nice hair is, they want to touch her hair, she won't let you do it. But again, she's also been instructed to strike back. So so yeah, we don't play that. But yeah, for my non-black people, um, don't ask, can I touch your hair? And if you do ask, can I touch your hair? Wait for them to give you permission to do so. Because if you reach, you're going to get popped. Number 5, you're so lucky to have a tan. Yeah, that ain't something you want to say to black people. Because, our tan is our tan. It's our hue. It's what we've been born with. And we love it, but we don't spend a lot of time in the sun. We came like this. um, number 6, you're not black. You must be mixed with something because you're so light skinned. Yeah, that ain't the one, y'all. Especially to my white folks out there that's listening. Listen, white folks, don't say that. I know that some of you don't know the difference between light skin and dark skin or what have you, but don't just assume because, someone's very light that they're mixed with something. I wish I had time to talk about what they were mixed with, but that's if you do your history, that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother time. When it comes to education, number 7, never say this. You speak so well, or you speak articulately. As if we're not articulate people. We're very articulate. And we speak very well. And some of us choose to speak in different languages or speak in slang or speak in ebonics, and that's speaking well as well. But that ain't for you to say. And that is technically I can't say technically. That is the most backhanded comment that one of the most backhanded comments that you can give a black person, that you speak well and you speak articulately. Number 8, you're actually really smart. Duh. As opposed to the alternative, I'm supposed to be really dumb. Yeah, that ain't what you want to say. That, depending on the circles that you're in, may get you cussed out. Literally. Number 9, who taught you how to speak English? Now, black people really don't get that because, for most of us, English is our native language, but our African brothers who, a lot of times, white folks and other people can't really tell, like they just see a dark pigmentation. So they assume that everybody's black, and, you could be African and not necessarily identify as black. And then when they start speaking and you understand that, that they're speaking well, if you will, uh, yeah, if they're not, you know, from here or they're not native black people, even again, Africans, it doesn't matter where they're from or from the Caribbean or wherever. You don't ask somebody how they, you know, who taught them how to speak English. And that not only goes for us as black people, but Hispanics or our Asian brother and sister. Yeah, don't do that. Don't ask anybody who taught them how to speak English. But I'm strictly talking about black folks. But I mean that can cover so many different races as well. Number 10, you know so many words. Okay. As opposed to what? Knowing 5 words? On a college campus. Oh man, this is key. Number 11. Wow, you got into blank. Were you a diversity candidate? So whatever blank could be said school. Wow, you got into UCLA. You got into Stanford. You got into Columbia. You got into the University of Alabama. Were you a diversity candidate? No, white folks. Everybody black that shows up at a PWI, predominantly white institution, did not come in as a diversity candidate, and everybody doesn't play a sport. We just got there because that's where we applied and that's where we wanted to go. It's that simple. Number 12. Are you the first in your family to be educated? Another backhanded compliment. A backhanded question, I should say. Some may not find anything wrong with that, but I found that it's probably easier if you let someone tell you that as opposed to you asking the question. If I'm the first person in my family to have graduated from college, then that could come up in a conversation. But that's not something that you need to ask me. And for the record, I wasn't. Number 13, you don't sound black at all. Bruh. Okay. What does sound black mean? Don't answer that. Just what does sound black mean? If you have to ask that, or if you think you have an answer for that, keep that one to yourself. Don't ever ask this question. Number 14, teach me some slang. Hell no. Slang is meant for whoever it's meant for. Sometimes it ain't meant for you. Sometimes it ain't meant for you to understand. And sometimes slang is the only way that we can communicate with some people. It just depends on where you are and where you're from. And I want to let you people in on a little secret. Slang differs really depending on where you're from. So the slang in Atlanta ain't the same slang in Philadelphia. The slang in DC ain't the same slang in New York City. The slang in LA ain't the same slang in Seattle. It is what it is. At work, number 15. Here's something that you should never say. We can't attract or keep black employees. It's like they don't want to work. Bruh. Even if you thought this should never, ever come out of your mouth. It is a huge issue. You might get punched in the face. And more importantly, it's an HR issue that probably could get you fired. So if you like your job, don't ever mention that, even to a black person. Number 16. I'm so sorry. I didn't think that you worked here after calling security. Yeah, it's probably not a good idea to call security on anybody, let alone someone who works with you. You can't really get that back once you call the popo on me. Number 17. How did you make your money? Listen, the one thing that I've found in my lifetime is that, people who've earned a lot of money, more often than not, they hide their money. And more often than not, they don't want to tell you how they made their money. And I get it. I understand, but that doesn't mean that I want to tell you how I made my money. And a lot of times I know people will ask, okay, well, hey, what do you do for a living? Because I'll never forget, I was on a I was on a flight and I was in first class. And my objective anytime I get on a plane is to sit down as quickly as I can and put my headphones on. Because if I put my headphones on, that means don't talk to me. And so, I was going from, I think I was flying to New York from Atlanta. And, you know, first class, I'm the only black face in first class. And we sat down, dude, just trying to get a little small talk. And I got the Beats by Dre on my head, and I'm not really trying to talk. So I'm constantly having to take my headphones off to hear what he's saying. He's like, hey, so, what do you do for a living? And I took it as a diss, like, why are you I mean, we're 5 minutes into the conversation. Do you not think that I could afford this seat? I mean, it's first class, but you know, I, I make a couple of dollars. I can afford first class when I want to fly first class. It'd be different if I was on a private jet, but I mean, come on, man, it's Delta. And I didn't tell him anyway. I was very polite and I gave him a roundabout answer. He could look at me and tell that I wasn't a rapper, or maybe he thought I was. I'm Puff Daddy. um, Number 18. Never say this. We'll address it later, but just be careful not to play the race card. Folks, there's no such thing as a race card. Not when it comes to us. Period. I know, yeah, that was the popular saying after Johnny Cochran, successfully defended O.J. Simpson in his murder trial, but there's no such thing as a race card when it comes to black people because we don't have the card. So can't play something you don't have. We'll never have it, unfortunately. Number 19. I like you. Surprisingly, you're a professional. Yeah, that ain't the one, bro. That ain't the one. I mean, if I'm professional, okay, cool. But I don't need you to be that much surprised that I'm professional. Number 20. You could definitely pass as one of us. Yeah, that ain't what you want to say, Jack. And I'm going to tell you why. If you study your history, there was a movement. There were people in history who passed as one of you. And that never really went over well with us. So if you were black and you passed as a white person, yeah, that wasn't cool. So you don't want to say that. Number 21. Can we just use your initials? No, man. If my name is Muhammadu Kapambe, you're going to call me that. You're not going to call me MK. Yeah. And I feel for my African brothers and sisters or my Asian brothers and sisters where people don't want to pronounce their names and they want to just, switch it up. Well, I don't even say people, white folks, because by and large, black folks will call you by your name. Even if they can't pronounce it, they'll try. They might mess it up, but they'll try. But white folks, my white folks is listening. Nah, say their whole name. Here's a couple of miscellaneous ones. Number 22. Do you have any weed? Yeah, it's in my sock, fool. Don't ask people if they have weed. I mean, like, it's been some years since I've been asked if I had any weed, but the quickest way the quickest way for me to cuss you out is for you to ask me if I got some weed. Well, first of all, I mean, anybody knows me, I've never smoked weed. So I'm not offended if you offer me weed because I can easily say no. However, if you assume, and I can only assume that if you're white, you ask me if I have some weed, that you assume that I have the weed because I'm black. Why don't you have the weed? You're white. Shouldn't you have the weed? Number 23. Why can't black people swim? It's not a question that you want to ask black people. First of all, because black people can swim. You're listening to one right now. I'll swim laps around most of you. I mean, I grew up in the house that I grew up at. We had a pool. Shut up, King Germ. But I know how to swim, and I swim very well. But yeah, we can swim. Trust me, we can really swim. Most of us. Number 24. How can I be a racist? My ex is black. Listen, I don't care because your ex boyfriend or your ex girlfriend was black. Nah, that's not the same. Just because you dated someone outside of your race, you dated someone black, that doesn't mean that you're not that you're incapable of being racist. Everybody's capable of being racist, except black people, because we don't have the power to be racist. But that's another story for another day. But listen, in all seriousness, you can be racist, and don't ever say that. Don't ever, like, ever say that. That ain't cool. And lastly, number 25, question. Here's one thing that you cannot say to black people. Well, why do black lives matter? Don't all lives matter? Man, listen, I don't have enough time to talk about that. Um, the answer is no. You're supposed to say black lives matter because black lives do matter. They should matter. And they should matter to you because we're human. Period. But don't come with the all lives matter stuff. Nah, this ain't the time. And I'll explain more about that on another podcast. We don't have time for me to school you on that. Um, but yeah, those are just 25 things I wrote down. Now I did have a couple of bonus things, but this is on the flip side. So if you're around black people, if you've been around black people, there's probably a good chance that you've heard some of these things. And I think these things are comical, but these are pretty much unifiers across the globe when it comes to black people. Um, these are some sayings, and like I said, you probably heard them before, but I'm gonna give them to you anyway because I think they're funny and I think they go along with what this podcast is about. Um, Black parents would always say, "You better know that schoolwork the same way you know those songs." Listen, um, if I had a dollar for every time I heard this, I probably could buy some Jordans. I probably could buy some nice Jordans at retail price right now because I used to hear that all the time because I knew all the words to the songs, especially my favorite songs growing up. Um, Number two, you make that bed, you got to lay in it. Yeah, that one's pretty much universal. I think what you reap is what you sow, pretty much. Old school family members always used to tell us that hey, you make your bed, you got to lay in it. So if you did it, you got to own it. Um, oh, there's one that you'll always hear, from church and everywhere in between. Blessed and highly favored. Now that's just a positive affirmation that black folks use when they have been blessed throughout their life. I mean, honestly, we've all been blessed. If you're lucky enough to hear this podcast, you're blessed. Even if you don't believe in God or you believe in dirt, you believe in you worship a rock. I don't care. Um, I personally believe in God, and yes, I'm definitely blessed and highly favored. It's not something I have to say on the podcast, but but if you grew up in a church, particularly a black church, oh, you heard this, and you probably hear it every Sunday. Um, oh, here's another one. It takes a strong woman to fill that cup. That one's an old school one. I heard it a few times growing up, and it speaks to the older matriarchs, the older women in the family who kept the family together, who held it down through struggles. So you might hear someone describe your grandmother or great grandmother as the strong woman that filled up the cup of the family. So you can take that one. Oh, this is one especially that you were going to hear. We heard a lot, particularly during the summertime as you were coming in and out of the house. Go sit down somewhere. If I had a dollar for every time I said this to my kids, we could have a nice trust fund. Because I'm constantly telling my kids to go sit down somewhere, especially when they get on your nerves. And I mean, it's not really until you become parents that you understand and you think like, damn, did I really get on my parents' nerve like that? Did I get on my grandmama's nerve? But you will get told, black folks will tell you to go sit down somewhere. Oh, this is one that you hear quite often around black people. We family. Yeah, we family. That's it. Not we are family, not we is family. We family. And you probably heard that when you were visiting or you see somebody that or whatever like that. And to be honest, particularly for my folks who aren't black, black people can have family that ain't necessarily blood related, but you just been close and your family been close for so long that you call yourself family. So yeah, that's a popular saying. We family and we are family. And last but not least, another religious one. You better praise him. You can hear you better praise him on any given Sunday. That also goes along with God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. I don't care what church you're in or people who are leaving church or whatever the case may be. Um, yeah, you'll definitely hear that. But yeah, I just wanted to get on the podcast and just kind of have some fun with some things that I wrote down. Like I said, things to say, things not to say to black people. If you're listening to this, I hope you got some level of comedy from it. Not taken too serious, but also understand that everything that I said that you shouldn't say, particularly if you're not black, you really should not say, because ultimately it could get you slapped or beat up or shot. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5G.